Are you searching for a private investigator you can trust to help you solve a complex case? Are you frustrated because of how difficult it is to find a trustworthy and qualified PI? I completely understand your frustrations, and that is why I am not going to tell you why you need to hire me or my firm. But what I will do is let you in on the secrets to help you find a reliable and trustworthy PI. But more importantly, what red flags and warning signs you need to watch for to ensure you don't get scammed. No matter what the situation is, regardless of the type of case you are involved in, the stakes are high for you, and that leads to a lot of pressure to find the right PI. The first thing you need to keep an eye out for when looking for a private investigator is not the red flags. Rather, it's what we will refer to as the green flags. The green flags are the things that all good, qualified, and professional private investigators have. One of those green flags is a private investigator's license. Does the PI you are looking at hold a PI license? But having a PI license is not the end-all, do-all to ensure the PI you are looking for is trustworthy or qualified. No, the license only tells you a small part of the story behind that investigator. I have a little story I share with people about PI licensing. Here in Colorado, we do not currently have licensing for private investigators. Now, I'm not going to go into the story about why PIs aren't licensed here, but I will tell you a little story about a rogue PI who was once licensed here when we had licensing, and he probably shouldn't have been allowed to be in business as a PI at all. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. You see, this PI, who shall remain nameless, is still working as a PI right now. And when we had licensing, he came here from another state where he was not licensed as a PI and where he had felony convictions. But he was able to, through some soft points, or shall we say loopholes, obtain a Colorado PI license. Now, I had a lot of customers over the years contact me asking me to do some work for them, work that this individual had previously done, but not to their satisfaction. And in several instances, after we worked the case, we were able to identify many shortfalls he had taken. In fact, many times he didn't do real work. Rather, he just acted like he was working, and that led the client to being provided incorrect information regarding the case. We were able to also identify that he was using inferior equipment and technology that was several decades old, well beyond the age of being considered functional. Now, I bring this up not to show you how lax PI licensing can be, rather to show you that the fact that an individual or a PI firm holds a PI license, it has limited meaning. Having that PI license simply means that individual or firm has undergone some level of a background check and maybe, just maybe, some level of training and some level of testing. The big surprise for many people regarding PI licensing is that the training and testing they may go through to get their license does not mean they know anything about investigating or working your case. You see, the training for private investigators licensing usually is focused on helping the individual obtain their PI license. And the PI license testing requirements are usually focused more on what we would refer to as jurisprudence testing or jurisprudence knowledge. What that means is they have been tested on their knowledge of the laws, regulations, and ethical standards that govern their profession in the state that they reside in. Now, don't get me wrong. It is important for the PI to know these things, but knowing what is right and wrong does not guarantee they will do what is right and not do what is wrong. So don't be fooled into thinking just because a PI is licensed, they are trustworthy. PI insurance is another green flag to be looking for when you're vetting all of those private investigators. When it comes to PI insurance, you need to make sure that their insurance is specific for private investigators. I have seen a lot of PIs out there that just get standard business liability insurance, but The problem with that is that the standard insurance will usually not cover the incidents involved for insurance claims for most private investigators. I knew another PI who was out on a remote case and had a few nights that he had to stay out. He left his equipment in his car. Bad mistake, I know, but he did it. And his car got broken into, stolen, and then dropped off miles away with all of his very high dollar equipment gone. He had motor vehicle insurance, but it didn't cover anything for him except the repairs to the vehicle. He had homeowners insurance, which had a clause about covering electronics, but they said nope, the work equipment isn't covered. He also had a small business liability insurance policy through a regular insurance company, and they declined to even look at the claim. Fortunately, he had a PI insurance policy too that he recently got that had coverage for lost equipment, lost income, and that policy covered everything for him. But here is another big surprise. Anybody can get insurance these days. It is usually a matter of checking the right boxes and signing on the dotted line, then sending in some form of payment. Much like licensing, no one really vets out the PI for insurance. Sure, there's going to be some level of background checking to make sure they are a PI if they're getting PI insurance. The insurance company probably also checks for past claims, lawsuits, and other red flags too. But a lot of reliance goes into the fact that it is against the law for an individual to lie or obtain insurance through deceit. So the insurance company always has that to fall back on if the insurance individual files a claim when they shouldn't have had insurance in the first place. So, yep, just because they have insurance or a PI license, it doesn't mean they are trustworthy, capable, or a good fit for your case. Another green flag to look out for is their business status. The PI you're looking at does have a business, right? Now, back in the old days, it was quite often likely for a PI to just, be a PI. Bob could just hang up his shingle and call himself Bob the PI, and everything was all hunky-dory. Well, a lot has changed since the old days. Nowadays, I wouldn't recommend to do business with anyone who doesn't have an actual business, regardless of the profession. In fact, for private investigators, licensing and insurance will most likely require them to have some level of a business, be it an LLC or a corporation of some kind. And even if a PI isn't required to have a license or insurance, having an LLC just makes plain good sense, so they are afforded protections they wouldn't have otherwise. And in most cases, it costs less than $100 to form an LLC in most states. But just like licensing, just like insurance, this green flag, having an LLC, means nothing at face value. It just means they filled out the paperwork, signed the bottom line, and made the payment. Here's a good example I run into all of the time. The first is regarding business addresses. Most states require businesses to have a physical address for their business, not a P.O. box. And they have this requirement for many reasons, but one of the most important is in the event someone needs to serve that business legal documents. But I run into cases all the time where the address is a P.O. box or a UPS store box or some other mailbox like that, and the business uses a virtual address so it looks like a real address. Oftentimes, this is done for marketing reasons, professional appearance purposes, but it is also done to ensure the person's real address remains undisclosed sometimes too. And on a similar note, many times those businesses have a registered agent who is not available at the registered address. This is also a requirement for most states. The registered agent must be available during regular business hours at the registered address in the event the company needs to receive legal documents or, in other words, be served. So as you can see, there is no vetting of the PI professional when they register their business, and there may be no or minimal vetting of the PI when they get their PI license and their PI insurance. So if they have a license, if they have insurance, if they have a registered business, what does that mean? Well, that means they have passed part of the green flag testing process. Along with these green flags, you should also check a couple of other green flags as well. But keep in mind, passing the green flag test does not mean they are good to go with. There are red flags we need to watch out for too, and we will discuss those in just a moment. Another green flag is a professional website. Check out their website. Does it look professional? Does it answer your questions you have? Does it show they have the expertise you need in a PI? Good communication is another green flag you can look for, or rather, test. Do they answer their phone? Do they call back when you leave a message? Do they reply to emails? Professional PIs are often also going to be associated with professional organizations too. I am talking about professional state and national PI associations, as well as groups like a Chamber of Commerce. Now again, there are no guarantees that the PI is a good PI or a bad PI if they are or if they are not a member of a professional association, but it is a good thing to look for. Professional PIs are also going to have a contract for all cases. Make sure they use a contract and make sure the contract is not one-sided. Rather, it should protect both you and them and spell out the agreement. This leads well into the first red flag to watch out for, and that is no contract or one-sided contracts. Here is another case scenario to consider. I know of a certain PI here in Colorado who has extremely one-sided contracts with his clients. This goes so far as to have a non-disparagement clause in it, and at first glance, this may seem normal. But is it normal? Yes. In many B2B, business-to-business agreements, something like this might be in place. But in a contract for services, in my humble opinion, it is not normal, nor is it even legal. Essentially, what this says is that regardless of the outcome of the investigation, the client has no recourse, like leaving a bad Google or other social media review. Another red flag is vague and low-ball pricing tactics. I see this all of the time, and it drives me nuts. We can get started on your investigation for X dollars, and many times that X dollars amount is very low, like $500 or $1,000, and it is that low because they will use it to just get started. Then they will come back time and again for another 500, another 1,000, and so on and so forth. And before long, you have given them 5 to 10 grand, and they haven't done hardly anything except send you invoices. A professional PI is going to be able to give you price quotes to complete the investigation, or at the very least, to get to a certain point in the investigation. Make sure they spell out exactly what you will be getting for your retainer, how the work will be billed, and what kind of reports you will get as the investigation proceeds. And make sure that the retainer and the scope of the work, the reports, etc., is all spelled out in the contract too. Most PIs today, like other legal professionals, will require a retainer, will have a contract, and will spell out everything in that contract. Another red flag is criminal and civil legal actions against the PI. This is something you can usually check at some level yourself. Most states have a way to look up past and future court hearings. Now, you may only get a docket sheet for these cases, but it gives you an idea of what the case involved. For instance, those cases regarding the questionable PIs here in Colorado, if you look them up, well, they have extensive past civil actions taken against them, as well as some criminal behavior too. But what about referrals? Should you ask for referrals? Well, you can ask. But in most cases, the PI will not be able to provide you with referrals for one big reason. That big reason is that they have a duty to secrecy, to confidentiality, to ensure their clients' most private moments of life are not exposed. And that makes sense. After all, if you hire a PI, you probably don't want them giving out your phone number to future clients to call you for a referral, do you? And that is something else you need to ensure is in the contract, a confidentiality clause that protects you, the client. Now, besides all of these red flags and the green flags, the biggest thing that you can use to gauge the quality of the PIs you talk to is your gut feel. Once you know they pass all of the tests, once you know they have the qualifications they need, then you can do what your instincts tell you. This will usually lead to making the best choice.